Hello and welcome to a 642 Tiny Things to Draw update. We are starting off with birthday candles. I'm using watercolors by the brand Arteco and I'm starting with the flame with red at the bottom and then orange and then yellow at the top. I tried to blend those colors best I could, and then moving on to the candles, I am using 3 different colors of shimmery watercolor and adding a bit of darker shade on the outside edges to try to get some shadow. I'm going for the colored and white twisty candles, obviously. I feel like those are very reminiscent of childhood birthday parties. And I chose the glitter paints because glitter is fun, and then I added some glittery gray around the outside just to fill in the empty space, and then moving on we have a crumble of feta cheese. I kept pushing this doodle off for a very long time because I did not know how to approach it. I kept looking at reference photos and I was like, what? Eventually I decided on this block of cheese with little crumbly bits breaking off of it. I thought that would more so convey as cheese than just a bunch of scribbly blobs. This doodle is being done with a random office pen and a little bit of colored pencil in a pale cheese yellow. I think this one came out kind of cute. Also, if I sound weird, this is because I'm trying to keep my voice really low because it's my first night in a new apartment and I do not know how soundproof these walls are, and I really don't want to disturb my new neighbors at 9:50 at night. Moving on to panko, which is essentially breadcrumbs, I think, and this is another one that I've been pushing off because I don't know how to approach that, and eventually I was like, all right, screw it, we're not going to draw a single panko, we're just going to try to get the texture of pankos. So I'm using a couple different shades of brown of Grabby acrylic paint markers and stippling over the entire page, starting with the lightest brown and then medium brown and then darker brown, and then I added a couple little white flecks. The darker the brown, the less dots I made, and this kind of looks like skin. Definitely not a panko, but it does look like a cool texture. Moving on, we have a radish top, and this one came out really cute. I like this doodle. I got a mechanical pencil drawing set from the brand 4Candies, and in that set came colored lead, and I have not used this drawing set in a while, so I figured, yeah, why not? Let's bring out the colored mechanical pencils. I like my color blending highlight on the radish. That came out real smooth. I actually used purple for the shading of the radish, and I think that was a good choice. It doesn't look too harsh of a shadow. For the background, I tried to suggest that something leafy was behind the radish by coloring it all one shade of green and then scribbling some shadow spots with a darker shaded green, doing this scale or scallop pattern to try to get the texture of like a bush. I very much like the squiggly pattern I did for the dirt, and I shaded that in with just straight up graphite. Here it is finished. I think it turned out really cute. Next up, we have a squirrel skull. I had some trouble fitting this doodle in the box. I don't think the size and shape of the box matches how I proportioned the squirrel skull, so because of that, the nose suffered a little bit. I think the nose is too short, but it came out good enough. I'm using the 4Candies mechanical pencil set again because, I don't know, it's something different from my usual Artist Loft colored pencils. Instead of highlighting with yellow, I shaded with yellow because I thought that would be cool to do like a little reverse coloring thing, and I chose yellow because bones get a little yellowy. Scribble shading with micron because that always looks cool, and then I had fun with filling in the background, and I don't know why, but this looks like punk art to me. Anyway, moving on, we have a goose down, and this doodle came out like absolute dog shit. I don't know why I thought winging this without like planning the sketch first would be a good idea. I thought, oh, fluffy feathers are just a whole bunch of sprawling lines. I can throw down some lines and it'll look good. Yet no, it didn't. I'm using Grabby acrylic paint markers for this. I feel like I have done these markers a disservice because this is such a good art supply material and I have created something horrendous with it. I am so sorry, Grabby. Very happy to move on from this doodle. Now we're drawing nostrils, and I'm using Grabby acrylic paint markers again, so maybe I can redeem myself. I filled in the whole thing with flat coloring, different shades of purple because purple's pretty. Then I stippled some highlight and shadow, and I decided to make the piercings gold because I feel like silver piercings is just so common, and I wanted something a little different. Also, I like the contrast of warm and cool colors. And then I outlined the whole thing in a bright blue because why not? There's that all done. Next up we have jalapeno slices. I am using the Arteco watercolor again, and I am filling in the background pink because I think pink and green is a cute color combination. Then for the jalapeno slices themselves, I did pretty flat coloring. I used like a yellowish olive green for the base of the color, and then a darker green for the shadow edges, and then like a tannish color for the seeds. I added a little bit of purple in the background for drop shadows, and then I outlined all of this with Grabby acrylic paint markers. I didn't record it, but I also added a little bit of a white highlight using Grabby acrylic paint markers as well, and here it is all done. Next up is a cherry on top, which I am also using Grabby acrylic paint markers for. However, I am treating them like watercolor, so I'm putting down a scribble and then taking a wet brush to blend it out. I wanted to try to build up the colors and blend the colors as opposed to having flat colors or color blocking. This is an experiment. I have not tried this before. For the cherry, I started with a more brown red because cherries are not typically red, and also I thought a brown base would get that shadow, so here I am adding a brighter red on top, and I kind of like how it's working. You can somewhat see the brownish red under underneath. I used pink as a highlight, and I think that blended out really well. And then here I am splotching some red with a sponge in the background because to make it look more interesting. Then for some shine, I scribbled down white onto the cherry, and I added some colorful dots into the whipped cream as sprinkles. And then here I am outlining everything in Micron and adding some more scribbles in the background of the cherry because it looked really boring as just flat blue. I think this looked really good. Next up, we're doing a spider. Specifically a jumping spider because jumping spiders are adorable. I am first adding a base color with Artist Loft colored pencils. I tried to make this spider more cutesy and cartoony, but that didn't really work out well. It's still very much a spider. And now for hair texture, because jumping spiders are fuzzy little guys. For the fangs, I used metallic grabby acrylic paint markers because their fangs are usually quite shiny. For the rest of the fur hair, I used microns, and the hair is just a bunch of tiny overlaying dashes. Yes, this is tedious and time consuming. And lastly, I added some white hairs with acrylic paint marker to break up all the black, and here it is finished. I think it actually is pretty cute. Next up is the eye of a tiger, which I don't think is actually that tiny, but it's in the book, so here we are. As usual, base shading with Artist Loft colored pencil, and then filling in all of the black with Micron. I used the brush tip Micron because I thought that would be better at getting these tight corners and for filling in a large space. For any white, I left the white of the paper showing, and now for filling in the fur texture, doing that same technique I did for the spider, a whole bunch of dashes. I was originally going to use matte acrylic paint markers, but my metallic ones were closer to me at the time, so now we have a shiny tiger. I tried to draw the dashes in the direction that the hair would be growing on the tiger, however, that was kind of difficult to go around all of these striped lines. So the fur texture is a little messy, but I think it looks good nonetheless. Here it is finished. Next up, we have a pretzel. I'm using acrylic paint markers again, and instead of using the water to smudge and blend them out, I'm using my finger instead, so scribbling it down and then just smearing that paint before it dries. And I'm using a couple different shades of yellowish tan and then brown for the darker parts. When I was happy with the marker coloring, I took colored pencils to try to blend the brown into the yellow a bit better. However, I don't think it really did much of anything. Then I scribbled outlined and scribble shaded with Micron because that's fun to do. And then for salt, I added little dots using white acrylic paint marker and then outlined those with Micron as well. Also very scribbly because I like scribbling. If my voice also sounds scribbly, that's because I'm back to working as a scare actor, so my voice is shot. Anyway, here it is all done. I think it's kind of cute. That concludes this update of 642 Tiny Things to Draw. Click the link in the description if you want to see more of me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!